The night the foot burned like fire, it started with a strange ache. James Monroe, 66, a retired train conductor from Milwaukee, had felt it before. A little stiffness in his right toe after a day of yard work. He thought maybe he'd strained something, but that night the ache turned into fire. His toe swelled, the skin flushed red, hot to the touch. The pain shot up his leg like lightning. By 3 a.m., he couldn't walk, couldn't sleep, could barely think. At the ER, they called it what it was: gout. I thought gout was for kings, he muttered, half joking through gritted teeth. And yet, there he was, on a hospital bed, trying to remember what he ate the night before. A ribeye steak, a glass of red wine, shrimp cocktail. All to celebrate his grandson's birthday. Innocent, right? But for someone with gout, it was a recipe for disaster. The pain is not random. Gout is a type of inflammatory arthritis caused by excess uric acid in the blood. When levels get too high, uric acid forms sharp, needle-like crystals that settle in joints, often the big toe, but sometimes the ankles, knees, wrists. The pain can be sudden, severe, and deeply unsettling. But here's what most people don't realize. The trigger isn't just age or genetics. It's food. Certain foods don't just nudge gout, they ignite it, and they do it quietly until one bite becomes a flare-up. So today, we begin a journey, not of fear, but of awareness. And it starts with the most surprising enemy: seafood. When the ocean turns against you. Let me introduce you to Donna Fields. Former high school art teacher, lived near the coast in Charleston, loved shrimp more than she loved ice cream. She came to me after her second gout attack in 6 months. "I've cut out red meat," she said, "but it's still happening." We walked through her meals: shrimp stir-fry, mussels and garlic butter, a tuna sandwich at lunch, crab cakes on Sundays. What she didn't know, and what many don't, is that shellfish and certain oily fish are dangerously high in purines. Purines break down into uric acid, and in sensitive individuals, that process tips the body into a full-blown attack. Shrimp, scallops, sardines, anchovies, herring, these are all beautiful foods. But for those with gout, they are loaded guns. When we removed them and replaced them with plant-based protein and occasional poultry, no flares for over a year. Donna still missed her shrimp, but she told me, "I'd rather walk than wade." The seductive danger of red meat James, our train conductor, learned the hard way. That celebratory ribeye? It was more than just indulgence. It was a purine bomb. Beef, pork, lamb, especially organ meats like liver and kidney, are notorious gout triggers. They're dense, heavy, and push uric acid levels through the roof. I've seen men give up steaks with more grief than they gave up smoking, and I understand it. Food is emotional. It's ritual. It's memory. But I've also seen what happens when that sacrifice is made. Mornings without pain, shoes that fit again, hands that can hold a cup without wincing, and they tell me, I feel younger, not because I lost weight, but because I lost the weight of pain. Red meat doesn't have to disappear entirely for everyone, but if you're prone to gout, it should definitely no longer be your centerpiece. Sweet drinks, sour consequences. This is the one that surprises almost everyone. Sugary drinks are one of the worst offenders for gout, not just soda, but fruit juices, healthy sports drinks, even agave and honey in excess. Why? Because of fructose, a sugar that increases uric acid faster than almost anything else. Let me tell you about Barry from Tucson. 68, played golf twice a week. Ate light, drank orange juice every morning. He had 3 gout attacks in a single year. We pulled the orange juice. He replaced it with lemon water and unsweetened green tea. That was 2 years ago. No attacks since. He still golfs. But now, when he drives the cart, it's not to rest the pain. it's to enjoy the day. The myth of healthy. Triggers. Here's where it gets tricky. Some foods seem healthy, but are high in hidden purines. Asparagus, spinach, cauliflower mushrooms. Are they bad? No, but in large amounts, especially combined with other triggers, they can nudge someone already prone to gout over the edge. And then there's beer. Beer isn't just alcohol, it's yeast, it's purines. It's a perfect storm. More than one patient has told me, I gave up scotch, but I kept the beer. Didn't think it mattered. It did. I'm not here to tell you to live in fear of food. I'm here to tell you to see it clearly. Gout isn't random. It's a language. Your body is saying, please stop feeding the fire. And in the next chapter, we'll talk about what you can eat. Foods that not only lower uric acid, but cool inflammation and rebuild your trust in your body. Because the goal isn't restriction. It's relief. The foods that cool the fire. After James Monroe's gout attack, the one that landed him in the ER, he asked me something I'll never forget. Doc, he said, half laughing, is there anything I can still eat without fear? The question was honest and painful, because so many people, once diagnosed with gout, feel like the world of food suddenly becomes a minefield. One wrong step and boom, pain, swelling, sleepless nights. But here's the truth I've learned from years of walking this path with my patients. There is more safety than you think. There are foods that don't just not hurt you. They actively help you. They reduce inflammation. Lower uric acid, and most importantly, they rebuild the quiet trust between you and your body. Let's talk about what they are. And let's begin with the most unexpected ally of all, cherries. Cherries, the gentle antidote. I remember Eleanor Turner. Lived alone in a cozy home in Syracuse, New York. Avid gardener, former nurse. Her first gout attack left her limping across her own living room. When we talked about nutrition, I mentioned cherries. She raised an eyebrow. Cherries? I thought that was an old wives' tale. It's not. Tart cherries, especially Montmorency cherries, contain anthocyanins, compounds that reduce uric acid and calm inflammation. One study showed that people who consumed cherries daily had a 35% lower risk of gout attacks compared to those who didn't. Eleanor added a handful of frozen cherries to her breakfast every morning. Within 2 months, her joint stiffness eased. No attacks. She told me her hands felt cooler. Her garden got greener, and her smile came back. So, yes, sometimes it really is that simple. Water, the forgotten medicine. It sounds too basic, but if you live with gout, water is your first prescription. Gout is, at its core, a disease of accumulation. When there's not enough fluid in the system, uric acid concentrates. Crystals form. Pain begins. Hydration does 2 things. It dilutes uric acid. It flushes it out of the kidneys. I had a patient once, Mark, 70, from San Diego, who drank iced tea all day. No water. Just tea is water, right? He thought he was hydrated, but he wasn't. We made one change, a water bottle by his recliner, refilled 3 times a day. 3 months later, he was gout-free. It's boring, he joked, but boring beats crawling out of bed. Leafy greens, gentle on the joints. While high purine vegetables like asparagus or spinach can be problematic in excess, many other greens are powerful allies. Kale, romaine, arugula, Swiss chard. These contain chlorophyll, which helps alkalize the blood and reduce uric acid production. They're also rich in magnesium, a natural anti-inflammatory mineral that supports joint health. Combine them with lemon juice, olive oil, a handful of walnuts, and you've got a plate that both satisfies and heals. And speaking of olive oil, healthy fats. Fuel, not fire. Many people with gout avoid fat altogether, but it's not fat that causes inflammation. It's the wrong kind of fat. Trans fats found in fried food and packaged snacks are dangerous, but fats from sources like olive oil, avocados, ground flaxseed, fatty fish, like salmon, if tolerated, can actually lower systemic inflammation and protect joint linings. I often suggest to patients like Donna, you remember her, coastal, shrimp-loving, now shrimp-free, that they drizzle olive oil over cooked veggies or mash avocado into a slice of whole-grain toast. It tastes like cheating, she told me once, but it's not. It's healing. And she was right. The power of simple rituals. I want to return just for a moment to James, the man with the tomato garden. After his flare-up, he began a new routine. Each morning, a glass of water with fresh lemon oatmeal with flaxseed and cherries. A short walk around his garden, stretching a prayer for peace, not just of mind, but of body. After 6 months, he hadn't had a single attack, but he told me something more important. I stopped feeling scared of food. I started feeling like my body was on my side again. And that, to me, is the goal, not perfection. Partnership. Your plate is a conversation. Tonight, when you sit down to eat, ask this, not out of fear, but with curiosity. Is this food fighting me or freeing me? Because every bite you take tells your body something. Some say, brace yourself. Others say, you're safe now. Choose the ones that offer safety, not because it's trendy, but because you deserve days without fire, nights without throbbing, mornings where your shoes fit again. And in the next chapter, we'll explore the emotional side of gout, the shame, the confusion, the isolation that often surrounds chronic pain, and how to break free from it. Because healing is never just physical, it's personal. The shame beneath the swelling. I once had a patient, Anthony Ruiz, 69, from Albuquerque, tall, tough, former Air Force mechanic. He walked into my office with a cane and a tight jaw, trying not to show how much his ankle was hurting. Just give me something to knock the pain out, he said. I've got things to do. But after the exam, after the conversation about uric acid, food, hydration, and flare-ups, he paused. And I saw something in his eyes, something I've seen too many times before. It wasn't fear, it was shame. He stared at the floor and said, I feel weak, like I did this to myself. And there it was, not the gout, not the diet, but the story around the disease. Pain doesn't just hurt the body. Gout can be physically excruciating, but that's not the only damage it causes. It steals confidence, it isolates. It makes people cancel plans, hide their limp, lie about why they didn't come to the family gathering. I've had patients tell me they felt dirty after eating something they loved, then flaring up later. They blame themselves, or worse, they stop trusting themselves. They stop talking about it. And when we stop talking, we stop healing. Because what gout inflames isn't just tissue. It inflames self-worth. Breaking the silence around gout. Let me ask you something quietly. Have you ever felt embarrassed by your body? Ever told someone, I'm fine, when you weren't, just to avoid explaining the swelling, the cane, the limp? You're not alone. Gout isn't glamorous. It doesn't get ribbons or national campaigns. It's often joked about, misunderstood, or brushed off as a rich man's disease. But here's the truth. Gout doesn't care how much money you have. It doesn't mean you're greedy or lazy. It means your body is struggling with something complex and asking in its painful way for support. Not for guilt, for grace. The woman who hid her pain in her purse. Marilyn Cooper, 73, from Pittsburgh, used to keep a Ziploc bag in her handbag filled with ice packs. Just in case my toes blow up, she'd say with a strained laugh. She used to hide her limp behind excuses. Old injury, she'd tell her friends. Too much gardening. But the truth? She hadn't gardened in years. The pain kept her inside. What changed wasn't a miracle diet or a new pill. It was this. She told someone, not a doctor, not first, a neighbor. They started walking together, slowly, talking, comparing notes, recipes, tips, disappointments. She found out she wasn't broken, she was simply human, and when the shame lifted, her healing accelerated. Because the weight of pain is heavy, but the weight of shame is heavier. You deserve to be heard. If you've been carrying this alone, I want you to know. Gout doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you foolish. It doesn't make you less of a partner, parent, or person. It makes you human. Complex, worthy of care, deserving of relief, not just from pain, but from the silence that so often surrounds it. You don't have to hide your food choices, your limp, your flare-ups, your fears. You have the right to say, "This hurts," and not feel like you're confessing a sin. You have the right to say, "I need help," and not feel like you're failing. A simple step toward dignity. Tonight, I invite you to do one small thing. Tell someone. Tell a partner, a friend, a doctor, even just yourself in the mirror. Say, "I'm dealing with gout and I'm doing my best." Because that sentence can begin to rewrite the story from one of shame to one of strength. And in our next chapter, we'll talk about movement, not intense exercise, but gentle, thoughtful motion that supports the joints, eases the inflammation, and reminds your body that it was never meant to be still. Because motion, too, is medicine, and it's waiting for you. When the body stops trusting itself, there's a moment many people with gout remember vividly. You try to take a step, and your foot says no, not a little ouch, a sharp, swelling fire alarm no that echoes up your leg and straight into your heart. It's not just pain, it's betrayal. That's how Robert Klein described it. 70 years old, retired postmaster from Lexington, Kentucky. "It's like my feet stopped believing I'd treat them well," he said. So he stopped moving. No more walks, no more morning stretches, no more dancing with his wife in the kitchen like they used to. "I didn't want to risk another flare," he told me, so I froze. But here's the paradox of gout. The more you freeze, the more it flares. Because stillness is not safety. Stillness is stagnation, and the body, when it stops moving, forgets how to heal. Motion is not a threat, it's a signal. Many patients fear that moving during a gout flare will worsen the pain. That's true. During the peak of a flare, rest is essential. But between flares, movement is critical. Here's what gentle motion does. Improves circulation, helping flush uric acid, strengthens joints and muscles, reducing strain on painful areas, stimulates lymphatic drainage, reducing inflammation, improves insulin sensitivity, lowering uric acid production. In short, movement helps your body remember its rhythm. It reminds your joints they're not abandoned. The man who walked again. One wall at a time, Robert began with what we called wall walks. He'd place his hands on the hallway wall and take 10 slow steps forward, then back. Every morning. Every evening. No shoes, no pressure, just presence. After 2 weeks, we added seated stretches, then ankle circles, then a walk to the mailbox. 6 months later, he walked with his wife again. Not far, but far enough to feel like the man he remembered. He sent me a letter that said, "My feet didn't betray me. I betrayed them, but I'm learning to listen now." And the swelling? It slowed. The flares? They became rare. The fear? It softened, all because he moved. The right kind of movement for gout. Here's what I recommend, never as a prescription, but as an invitation. 1. Gentle walking, 10 to 15 minutes. Start indoors if needed. Wear supportive shoes. Flat ground only. The goal is not speed, it's flow. Seated stretching, toe curls, ankle rolls, calf pumps. These can be done while watching TV or reading. Tai Chi or chair yoga. Slow, deliberate movements that build balance, reduce stress, and support joint mobility. Swimming or water aerobics. If accessible, water supports the body and allows joint-friendly exercise without pressure. Foot soaks and massage. Not exercise per se, but a form of active recovery that improves circulation and reconnects you to your body. You don't have to do them all, you just have to start with one. When movement feels like rebellion. For many with gout, motion feels like a risk, but I want to offer a different image. Imagine each step not as defiance, but as forgiveness. You're not forcing your body to perform. You're inviting it to reconnect. You're saying, I haven't given up on you, and over time, your joints will believe you, your feet will soften, your muscles will remember, your confidence will return. Not because the pain is gone, but because you return to your body, even when it hurt to do so. You're not stuck. Gout makes many people feel frozen, caged, like their body is no longer theirs. But I promise you, motion is possible. Maybe not today, maybe not far, but gently, repeatedly, patiently. And in our next chapter, we'll explore the long view of healing, the deeper patterns of rest, hydration, and seasonal rhythms that support long-term stability. So you're not just reacting to flares, but preventing them with grace. Because the goal is not just fewer attacks, it's freedom. Healing isn't a quick fix, it's a rhythm. When we think of recovery, we often picture a straight line, but healing from gout doesn't move in lines. It moves in circles. There are good days and hard days, quiet months and sudden setbacks. Hope, then frustration, then hope again, and the real work, the kind that lasts, isn't in avoiding the next flare. It's in building the kind of life that makes flares less likely in the first place. That's what Martha Lynn discovered. Years-old widow, lived in a small home just outside Asheville, North Carolina. Her gout had come and gone for years, always surprising her, always throwing her off rhythm. Until she realized that was the problem. She had no rhythm. Meals at odd hours, sleep in spurts, dehydration. Long stretches of stillness followed by sudden bursts of activity. Her body never knew what to expect, so she began to build a rhythm, not around fear, but around kindness. The power of predictability. Our bodies love consistency. That doesn't mean routine for the sake of rigidity. It means signals, cues, anchors that tell your nervous system you're safe, and safety changes chemistry. Cortisol drops, inflammation cools, hormones stabilize, pain sensitivity lowers, uric acid becomes easier to manage. Here's what Martha did, not overnight, but gently. Ate breakfast at the same time each morning, kept a glass pitcher of water by her chair, finishing it daily. Took a short walk after dinner, stretched before bed. No screens. Slept with the window open, fresh air, cool temperatures. She called it her circle of care. And within that circle, her flares stopped for almost an entire year. But more than that, she felt herself again. Seasons matter. 2. Did you know gout tends to flare more in winter? Cold weather tightens blood vessels, making it harder for uric acid to circulate. Dehydration is more common. We eat heavier meals, move less. That's why many of my patients build seasonal strategies. In winter, warm foot soaks to improve circulation, bone broth with low purine vegetables, heated slippers to support joint health, extra hydration, even if you're not thirsty. In summer, cold cherry smoothies, light, fresh meals, greens, berries, lean protein. Morning movement before heat sets in salt balance, especially if you sweat heavily. Understanding your body through the lens of seasons builds trust, and trust is what gout takes away first. The gentle art of preparation. There's a phrase I use with my patients. Pack for the weather your joints expect, meaning don't wait for pain to prepare. Have a simple meal plan with safe foods ready, a heating pad or cold pack nearby, magnesium rich. Epsom salts on hand, a quiet routine for when flares do arrive, books, music, cozy socks, something that brings you ease. This is not fear-based planning. It's self-respect. You know your body better than anyone. You've walked with it through fire. Now you're learning how to cool the coals before the flame returns. You're allowed to rest. One of the most healing things I ever told Martha, something she said made her cry, was this: you don't have to earn your rest. Gout flares are exhausting. Even when the pain fades, the fatigue lingers, and many people push through it, afraid of being lazy, ashamed of slowing down. But rest is not weakness. It's part of the rhythm. Work, nourish. Move, rest, repeat. You don't have to be productive every hour. You just have to be present with what your body needs. Build the circle you want to live in. By now, you've learned which foods cause inflammation, which choices cool it, how emotions shape your flares, how movement builds trust, how rhythm builds resilience. And in our next and final chapter, we'll bring it all together: the stories, the science, the setbacks, the quiet victories. We'll return to the beginning, the night James Monroe's toe caught fire, and see what healing really looks like when it isn't flashy, but faithful. Because gout doesn't define you, but how you respond to it, that becomes your story. Back to the night the toe burned, you remember James Monroe, the train conductor, the ribeye, the birthday, the fire in his foot. What I didn't tell you is what happened 6 months later. He came back to my office with a different kind of stiffness, not from inflammation, but from caution. He was walking, eating differently, sleeping more. The flare had passed, but he was still afraid to laugh too hard, afraid to eat at his grandson's next birthday, afraid to trust that this peace in his joints might last. "I feel better," he said, "but I don't feel safe." And that's when I realized he wasn't healing from gout alone. He was healing from fear. The story Gout writes, and the one you get to rewrite, Gout tells you to shrink, to tiptoe, to doubt every bite, to pull back from friends, from plans, from stairs, from dance floors, from joy. But I've seen a different ending. I've seen men and women walk back into their lives, not recklessly, but wisely. They don't chase perfection, they build confidence, not because flares never return, but because now they return to themselves faster. They don't spiral. They soften. They listen. Adjust. Support their body instead of blaming it. That's what James learned. His new birthday plate. At the next birthday, his grandson's 8th, James brought a bowl of cherries and a pitcher of lemon water. He skipped the shrimp cocktail, had a small piece of grilled chicken, walked after the cake instead of sitting stiffly. No fire that night, no pain, just quiet sleep, a steady pulse, and the feeling of ease. It wasn't just the food, he told me later. It was how I carried myself. I didn't come in afraid. I came in ready. What ready looks like. Here's what I've seen in people who live well with gout, not by luck, but by choice. They know their triggers, but don't live in fear. They walk before the pain comes. They drink water like it's their best medicine. They rest when their body asks. They treat each flare-up not as failure, but feedback. They talk about it, openly, without shame. They forgive themselves for the hard days, and they celebrate their victories, however small. That's what ready looks like. Not perfect, but present. What if you believed it was possible? What if you believed that healing wasn't behind you, that your best days weren't buried under the swelling and the silence? That every quiet change, every glass of water, every stretch, every honest conversation was a step back to yourself? You don't have to become someone new. You just have to come home, to your body, to your needs, to your hope. Because gout may still visit, but it no longer has to stay. The fire will fade. If tonight you feel the sting in your foot, if you're afraid to move, If you've stopped believing your body will ever forgive you, I want you to know it can. It will. With gentleness, with rhythm, with a little cherry juice, a little lemon water, and a lot of compassion. James planted tomatoes again this year. He walks every morning. He laughs more now. He still keeps his cane nearby, but he hasn't needed it in months, and when he looks at his feet, he no longer sees betrayal. He sees trust restored. With all my respect, Dr.